Over the last several years, we have seen the cost of development balloon throughout AAA games, leading to unsustainable business models that rely on staggering popularity in order to recoup several years of spending to ensure profitability. New game development technology is capable of doing anything, which has somehow created this expectation that games should do everything. There has always been a race within game development to finally create hyper-realistic games that could accurately resemble reality to nearly every detail. And the truth is, we did it, and the race to achieve that goal has been incredibly expensive. But the most expensive part of development is the sheer artistry that goes into them. In truth, I don't like equating growing budgets to the cost of processing details because I feel as if it disconnects development from the people who are actually working to create that art and design that experience. As games seek to grow and increase in detail, that requires a staggeringly greater amount of time and effort dedicated to creating that experience, from art to code to design to playtesting and everything else in between. Even with increases in game prices from the traditional $60 to $70, the truth is that the value of art going into the games is far greater than the cost of the game itself. Expectations within games has greatly increased as new technology has developed. Every year, games are expected to grow in artistic detail. We love it when we can see the visual growth over time, to the point that an obsession has been placed on the sheer graphical quality of every game. Because of this, the value of games has become equated to the visual appeal of the game. When a game does not visually compare to other recent releases, the value and cost of that game is questioned. Simply put, every game feels like it needs to be visually revolutionary nowadays, which means that many of the biggest AAA studios have needed to substantially increase their budgets over time. By doing so, studios have created games that, despite growing budgets, don't substantially innovate in their design. This shift is understandable because it's hard to recognize innovation when it's not visual. Even when game design is expanded and improved between installments of a game, many consumers will still seek after visual improvements over design improvements, because those are the things that can be most immediately understood. Even with remarkably innovative games, such as Tears of the Kingdom, there was some concern among players that the game was relying on the same engine with visually identical art and reused pieces of landscape design. From that perspective, it seems like the game was hardly new, but that feeling of lacking newness comes from the idea that every game needs to be a brand new blockbuster that visually grows with every installment. Still, the shift is not sustainable. Likewise, many games with high budgets draw out developments by using live service models, where money invested by consumers can then be reinvested into future updates. This live service model allows customers to pay for the exact content they desire at the time in which it's desired, because the work on the game is continuous. With an initial budget investment, the game can become somewhat self-sustaining, as long as the game retains popularity and players continue to consume new updates. A smaller development team can continue expanding on the game near indefinitely. This model, however, can also be a constraint because the game will continue to operate on the same core mechanics and development technology for the extent of its popularity. After enough time, something new is desired to take its place, and that desire can come from a demand for better visuals and new mechanics, or from the developers desiring a new base to innovate off of through future updates. In order to meet the audience desires, games have become incredibly expensive, but this cost has created a need for every game to succeed in order to regain development costs. And not just succeed, but thrive. Every game must be a staggering success in order to be profitable. Fortunately, many games are. The games industry continues to be extremely profitable, yet by focusing on blockbuster games, games creatively begin to stagnate. Simply put, the demand for blockbuster games from large studios has inhibited the potential for smaller, creative-focused, and personal projects. Developers have access to incredibly advanced technology for development. However, these tools are used for only one purpose nowadays: the hegemony of technology, perhaps. Fundamentally, the more detail that goes into a game's graphics, the more money the game will cost. However, that does not imply that the game is good or of any substantial quality. It simply means the game costs more to make, and therefore costs more to sell. But this creates a distinct divide between AAA games, which are forced to be expensive blockbusters, and indie games, which have no such obligations. Quickly, with staggeringly different budgets, you begin to realize that the costs going into graphic quality and detail aren't actually making substantial improvements over the game's artistic quality. In fact, games on lower budgets often still can look quite good, as if the artistic team has a clear vision and is able to execute well on that vision. But then, good artistic quality is not dependent on substantial sums of money that make up AAA budgets, but is dependent on talented artists with strong artistic ideas. Certainly, if we move past expensive artistic detail, we can begin to better fund artists and developers while making games that look different, not worse. As a result of this different business model found in many indie game studios, games are able to cost less to make and sell without negatively impacting the game's art. In fact, perhaps these smaller budgets are beneficial for game art. While the industry has been in a race to reach hyper-realistic graphics, the ability of games to look hyper-real has simply become a matter of having enough money. As Satoru Iwata once said, "Constraint is the mother of creativity." Considering this, lower budgets mean that developers have the opportunity to develop new art styles or successfully ideate and innovate on established styles that make games look visually stunning without ballooned costs. Indie studios don't have the obligation to be blockbusters, which means they have creative and artistic liberty to explore, whether that exploration fails or succeeds. Still, I find it more important that game budgets fund people and not graphical details. Game budgets across the industry can certainly be substantially decreased, but large budgets can still be justified if it means developers have funding and space to truly design and create. While the price increase of games from $60 to $70 has made an expensive hobby somewhat more expensive, the truth of the matter is, games are worth far more than $70. So much work is condensed into a simple, valuable package that is able to cost far less than the sum of its value due to the popularity of the medium. But the $70 price tag shouldn't be endemic of a path to unsustainably high game budgets. Rather, the $70 price tag should be an assurance that developers were fairly compensated and given adequate time to develop without crunch. Budgets are directed to people and the time it takes to complete the work they produce. So, with budgets as high as they are, it's absurd that the industry is still battling with crunch culture. By raising the price of games, we should also raise the protections for developers. Ultimately, with more time and space, as well as less focus on pure graphical detail, developers can produce incredible work without negative emotional impact nor any decrease in game quality. This shift would be beneficial for developers, customers, and game studios alike. Games are incredible conglomerations of work from diverse bodies of developers working in various different fields. They are staggering pieces of art that require careful work to ensure cohesion in every element. It is fundamentally important that developers are treated fairly and given spaces to truly create impactful work. Bigger budgets and quicker turnaround development times end up demanding unhealthy crunch work from the developers, which ultimately hinders the art of the game. As the price of games increases, it is important to prioritize developers, because the work they develop is of a far greater value than any price tag you can put on it.